In the FBI's view, our family was some sort of continuing criminal enterprise. Our children's photographs and descriptions of them were displayed on police wanted posters and widely circulated through the media, schools, medical clinics, etc. There was one operation called Western Sweep, in which this area of Western Mass was particularly targeted. They encouraged people to snitch. They offered reward money. It attempted, by using our children in this way, part of what the FBI was doing was attempting to put us in this compromising situation of having to decide, when it came to our children's medical care, whether we are going to stay away from that medical clinic or doctor because of the risk involved, or go there and potentially be exposed and have them come down on us. In the midst of this police hunt, we were not really very close to Western Mass. But in the middle of this hunt, there came a time when a young homeless couple came to us with their baby. It was a cold winter, somewhere in northern New England. And they had no place to stay. They had a 6-month-old with them. And they came to us, because I had met them a previous year on a construction job I had worked on. They came to us because they needed a place to stay. They were desperate. They would defy every security precaution we had in place for our own survival. We took them into our home, and they lived with us for about a month and a half. These folks didn't know who we were, but they knew what we were through sharing food, shelter, and raising children. When an FBI contingent raided their place 2 years later, it was at that time they learned who we were. This couple, who were pretty much frightened out of their wits by the FBI breaking the door down, became very concerned about the safety of us and our children, and went public to refute the image of us as criminals. Boston Globe ran a story on it at the time. But theirs remained a minority view. After our arrest and the arrest of our comrades, Roddy pointed out, the children were separated, isolated, repeatedly interrogated. There were attempts to bribe my 8-year-old daughter. And essentially, it became, it was a blatant attempt to break down the parent-child relationship and turn it into a prosecutorial tool. When this police misconduct was brought to the attention of the judge at the sedition trial in Springfield, he ruled that while it, quote, shocked the conscience, these police actions, it was well and good according to the Constitution. The precedent had been set in some non-political case. Through 20 years imprisonment, separation from my children brought endless emotional pain. We'd never been separated before for any extended period of time. Now they too had to carry the burden of prison. And they had to do it with a child's sense of time, separation, and longing, and all that brings to bear. I was sent from the sedition trial at its conclusion. I was sent directly to Supermax prisons and federal prison system, not for any disciplinary violation, but because of my political convictions and how the government perceived that. So I initially went to Marion, which had replaced Alcatraz, and then I went to ADX. These are the big isolation prisons. ADX replaced Marion's. Visits with my children became infrequent due to the distance and the expense. My children and I were never allowed to touch a prohibition during these visits, a prohibition that was enforced by a plexiglass wall that separated us. And we had to speak through telephones, and I had 3 young girls, and they only had 2 phones to speak on. Our love and our hurt was expressed in one way by pressing our hands and lips to the glass wall that separated us, until some guard would admonish us and tell us to step back or have the run the risk of the visit being terminated. I'd always thought I could protect my children, perhaps through my own arrogance. I always thought I could protect them, but the FBI and the courts proved otherwise. Every time that my children needed me over 2 decades in prison, I wasn't able to be there for them. In sickness, in loneliness, in their bouts with the blues, needing help to grow, find their way, just needing a hug. I wasn't there. I was 2,000 miles away in a boxcar cell. I can't give you a measure for that kind of pain. I can only tell you that it hurts like hell, and no child should have to bear it alone. It was over 10 years before my daughters and I had touched again. By then, they'd grown from little girls to young women starting families of their own. Today, they've not only survived their ordeals, they've thrived. They're wonderful young women with beautiful families, and Pat and I have been blessed with 3 grandchildren from them. Early on, the RFC stepped forward to help our kids through an extremely difficult period. Robbie and the RFC didn't come to me and said, "You made a mistake when you had children underground. And because of that, otherwise we'd like to help. We can't help you. We're not doing anything for you." They didn't even ask me that question, because I don't think the question of what kind of decision I made obtaining my children, whether they have children or not, the police punished us for that. They punished me for that. But the RFC wasn't going to punish me for it. They saw the need, and that's what they responded to. And I am forever grateful for that initial unconditional support. Of course, since those early years, the RFC has expanded its programs, which now includes the Adequate Visitation Fund and gatherings. Those programs didn't exist earlier on. My children certainly could have also benefited from those programs. It's just great today to see other kids to see that there are other kids and families in their situation, to see that there's support there. Programs that provide crucial help to children, strengthen family, and build a community of support. In closing, for my family, and for those activists I know, past and present, from Matuda Shakur, who shared a boxcar in their cell near me, for Oscar Lopez, who shared a boxcar cell near me, for our sister, Marilyn Buck, and all the others. And for those I don't know, but whose families are in need, I thank the RFC from my heart, and all of those whose concern and generosity help provide for the children of resistance. Thank you very much.